Martial arts is about developing yourself beyond the average everyday person, be it mental toughness through going through the hardships of training, physically going again through the hardships of training, and spiritually you end up realizing that there's so much more that you can control than just your physical abilities and your emotions.
Give it a G! Whoa. Give it in! Stay down!
Sometimes you'll see MMA guys or people who don't know what they're really looking at critiquing traditional martial arts, and they'll say that it's ridiculous because the guy throws a punch and then he just stands there to get beat up. But what they're not realizing is in that instant of that guy's throwing the punch and then he gets hit with a counter strike, he is stunned.
Right to his jawline. Then I'm going to stomp.
Once they're stunned, their follow-on strikes work off natural body movements when it's done correctly. They cannot then get away from us. So a lot of times with them saying, it's not realistic or it wouldn't work, they're totally mistaken.
Here, hit. Pop. Hit again. Okay?
Sometimes also with the MMA stuff, they'll say that technique is ridiculous. Eye pokes and stuff don't work in fights because they don't use them in the UFC, which is absolutely ridiculous. There's a lot of stuff in the UFC that isn't used. If you follow their reasoning, then guns don't work and knives don't work because they're not allowed in the UFC. But eye pokes, throat strikes, temple strikes, even some of the pressure point stuff, the real pressure point stuff that's not allowed to be used in the UFC is because it causes injury immediately and it's irreparable. You hurt somebody on purpose that way, then you're kind of taking them out of the competition aspect and taking away their livelihood, which is why they don't allow it. So sometimes you just need to know what you're talking about before you say it. The most important thing to pass on is perseverance, the honor, the loyalty, the respect, effort, the discipline. Basically the 5 rules of our school is what I try to pass on to the students every class. You can't learn real martial arts without learning some physical conditioning. You have to. That doesn't mean you have to be in MMA fighter shape all the time, but you need to be physically fit. If you want to win a fight, you still got to be able to be in the fight. And cardio and being able to last however long the fight lasts is very important. Most street fights don't last more than a long one is a minute. Most of them are 20-second altercations. Most people with minimal training should be able to last that long if their skills are good enough to keep them from getting hurt. But they need the physical conditioning to be able to hit with power, stay on balance, and have the energy reserve to last to the end of the fight. You can't dictate the size of the attacker coming at you. The attacker dictates the size of their victim, but the victim doesn't always get to choose the size person that's dealing with them. So you have to be able to adapt the techniques to deal with a person who is twice your size, a person who has more reach. You might have a different training level. You might have a person who's a boxer or a wrestler or a person who's an MMA person. You need to be able to adapt your technique to deal with those situations. Some people just move differently when you hit them, so you need to train with as many different body types and as many different reactive people so you can know what's going to happen. And if you punch a person and they go right, then you have this piece of the technique. If you punch a person hard and they back straight up, then you have this piece of the technique. You need to be able to do that without thinking, and that only comes through repetition and dealing with it in class. The purpose of Kempo and the way we do it is win, self-defense. Being a go person is all great, that's all part of it, but when it comes down to the fight's gonna happen, you can't get out of it, win. That's the underlying factor for that is whatever you have to do to win this fight so you can be the one that goes home. When I can see a student who can do the material of their level and all the levels below them proficiently, quickly, confidently, then I'll think they're ready to test. As far as when a purple belt looks better than all the other purple belts, then they're ready to test for blue belt. They have to have that ability to go above and beyond their peers in their rank. Otherwise, they're not ready to progress. What would make me fail them? If you freeze over and over, then I'll fail you on a test. If you are weak mentally and can't or won't perform the techniques properly, I won't pass you, I'll fail you. If I have a student who I thought was ready and everything was working out, but then they failed the test because of something that they're doing, I'll usually try to coach them at some point, give them a little bit extra over setting up for the next test, but I'll still fail them.
Whenever you're fighting a human, on top of shoulders is a head. Aliens totally different. Okay, so from this, 1, 2. Whoa, look at that. Slam. Okay? Okay.
Success and victory are reserved for those willing to make the sacrifices necessary to achieve it. And what that is the person who on class night comes to class, doesn't go to the movies, and is willing to sacrifice a lot of the fun to be able to progress, practice, and train. They will always outshine and move past the people who are only doing the class for curiosity's sake versus making it a lifestyle. Biggest method to my madness is knock them off their stool, get them out of their comfort zone, put them places where they didn't know they were going when it comes to their training, when it comes to what they think they know. You need to bring a person out of their comfort zone before you'll ever make progress. No progress ever comes from comfort. So the more that I can push them, the more that I can make them think, the more I can make them adapt, the better fighter they are.
Notice my position of my knees. She can't pull me over. Okay? Okay? Good check. See that? If my knees are here, I'm gonna fall. Okay? Every time. That's what I don't, especially with her. Okay? Make sure your knees are here. Then you can do whatever you want. Alright, give it a shot. Try it.
We very much embrace the aggression in Krav Maga. Krav Maga and Kempo are very compatible when it comes to being aggressive and self-defense. Krav doesn't have a lot of backing up. There might be a little bit of evasion in a technique or making a punch miss, but for the most of it, Krav is, you punch a Krav person, they're going to tear you down. The same thing for Kempo. It's a lot of strikes, a lot of taking a person down hard and not letting them get a chance to throw another strike. You pretty much overwhelm them, shock and awe. Is basically, a lot of times it was buzzwords for that. We actually call it intensity and ferocity. When you wake up the tiger, you got to deal with the tiger. It's kind of hard to describe all the teaching methods and drills, and they take a long time, but a lot of them put you in a do or die situation. You don't have any choice other than to try to succeed, and that builds the confidence and it builds the winning mentality. So sometimes we'll put a person on the floor and you got 9 people slamming into them and not letting them get up, and it's not going to stop until they can reach their feet. So that's one drill that teaches the winning mentality, but also teaches the aggression. You need to get up. Krav Maga as a military system, it really works well for the people who aren't going to dedicate their time to learning an entire complete art like Kempo. It's taught to be very quick, very efficient in a very short amount of time. It's very, very good self-defense, very brutal, and there's a lot of different techniques to it that are adaptable to other situations. So it makes it good for today's society when people are too busy to do an art like Kempo. One of the things I liked about Krav in the beginning was the gun defenses. Krav Maga has the best gun defenses in the world, bar none. I had spoke with some of the Israelis in the past and said, well, if they want the wallet, give them the wallet. And they said it's different than that, because here in America, a lot of times it's a money crime. They want your car, they want your wallet, they want what you have. But in Israel, if a terrorist has a gun to an Israeli's head, he's gonna kill him. It's either try and do the technique and stay alive, or sit there and die anyway. So that's where a lot of their training processes come from. And they have developed, like I said, some of the best gun defenses in the world. There's a big difference between a street attack, a kickboxing style ring attack versus a MMA fighter. MMA and kickboxing are sports. They're not combat. Outside influences are not allowed. You don't have multiple attackers. You don't have foreign objects, knives, guns, clubs, bricks involved in MMA or a kickboxing match. The street attacks could be anything, and one of the things that a lot of people misunderstand is with a kickboxer or an MMA fighter, the other opponent isn't really trying to win all the time. He's actually at some points trying not to lose. And when they throw a punch and they get hit, and then they throw another punch, they get hit, they tend to change their game. With a street fighter, he's coming up with a punch, and he might be trained, he might not be trained, but he is going to hit you with that punch at full force. And he's going to throw it as hard as he possibly can. And if he misses, he could easily take himself off balance or knock you out. But most MMA fighters and stuff like that, they're not 100% commitment in every punch. Not saying that they don't knock each other out, because they do. But the street attack, the street fighter doing it, rarely is he going to hit you light, or rarely is he going to not have a good commitment in his movement. As far as ground fighting, grappling, jiu-jitsu, whatever you want to call it, street grappling is much more brutal. I've seen people pull knives. I've seen a guy win a fight on the ground with a quarter. He stuck the quarter in the other guy's eye and twisted it. It's pretty horrific when stuff like that happens. That stuff doesn't exist in tournament jiu-jitsu. They don't allow small joint manipulation, so no bending fingers back, no biting, no eye gouges, or any of that stuff that on the street is common. It's going to happen a lot, and it's going to happen fast. Combative jiu-jitsu or street grappling is all the dirty stuff that BJJ and the other tournament systems aren't allowed to do. All the attributes that come from training in martial arts, a lot of people talk about how it gives them strength and how it prepares them for other things, and the mental toughness and all those things. All the benefits of martial arts stem from one thing, and that's confidence. When you are confident, you can deal with the situations. When you are confident, you can overcome an altercation or a situation. You tend to think clearly. You tend to think well under pressure and under stress, and that changes everything.
heavy.